It's very difficult, and I'm not a farmer, and I'm not suggesting for a minute that I could do a better job, but this is about feedback. This is about where we don't want to be, and this is about where we want to be. Okay, so first up we have the sort of lamb that we do want in our butcher shop. This is a good graded lamb. We can see here on the ticket it's a U3H, which is a good size conformation and the right kind of fat cover for my shop. Fat cover varies from shop to shop, but this is what I'm looking for, and I'll show you why in a minute. We've also got on here our slaughterhouse number so that we know that that's been slaughtered correctly in the UK. It has been inspected and it has been graded as it's come through. We've got things like NSL, standing for New Season Lamb, so we know if it's new season or old season. And then we've got things like the slaughter date, very useful for a butcher because then we know where we want to age this animal to, and more importantly from. So I'm going to now break this lamb down into what we call primals. That is literally just taking this and making it into smaller pieces so that they're more manageable in a shop setting. The first cut we're going to do is I'm going to take off the breast of lamb or the belly of lamb. I'm going to make an incision up by the end of the leg and then come all the way around underneath the shoulder here so the line comes along. Take a saw and we'll cut that breast section off. So that's our first primal. And then what we'll do is we'll mirror that the other side. So we have two breasts of lamb or bellies of lamb. So again, coming up by the leg, getting into that top piece of fat, and then coming all the way around and underneath the end of the shoulder there. So there we have second breast or belly of lamb. Now that we can see inside the lamb, you can see the kidneys, which we always get with the lambs. You can see up in the rib cage, and you can see down towards the legs. Taking away that first section, the breast and belly, that's a slightly harder working muscle group. So we generally consider those low and slow cook. Same with the next piece we're going to take off. We're going to take off the shoulder section. That's a grazing section of the animal, doing lots of work. So should be building up lots of fat, lots of flavour in there. And again, that we want to cook nice and low and slow. To do so, we count down the ribs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we just make a little mark close to the 6th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Little mark close to the 6th. Marry those up, make sure I'm in line with the same ribs. I'm just going to catch the end of the shoulder blade here because actually I'm looking to keep as many cutlets as I can, but equally I don't want too much shoulder blade in my cutlet. So I've got to come nice and close to that 6th. Come straight through. Now we have our shoulder section, but that's our next primal, shoulder. So again, harder working muscle. So generally low and slow cook. Now on to the next section. We've got our legs of lamb here, the rump, going down into the loin and into the racks. So we've got this whole sort of loin section and this leg section. We're going to split the two because that's our next primal. To do that, we're going to find the joint at the bottom of the lumbar section. So I've just removed a little bit of fat there, just so that I can now see where those joints are, where the discs are. Throughout all of this breaking into primals, we're looking to find the ends of muscles, the ends of bones, so that we're not just cutting through in random places. Up at the shoulder, we were looking for symmetry in the top of the body, so where the shoulder blades move at the back, which is where we've taken off here, so you can see the end of the shoulder blades because you have that rotation. Same with down the bottom, we're looking for the rotation at the hips. So actually we're looking for the first straight vertebrae. So if we come down there, and cut straight lines each side. So see the nice straight mark through the joint. I can actually join that up on this side. We shouldn't need a saw. We can just separate the two like so. So we've got our nice chop section. Now we have our primals. We have our low and slow cuts, the breast and belly, the shoulders. We have our medium cooks, the leg, the rump moving into that steak section. And then we have the muscle at the top of the animal that does very little work. So this section here, very little work, which means it's more tender, perhaps not so much flavour within that sirloin and fillet area. So those parts of the loin muscle do less work, but therefore have less flavour profile. Up the top here in the rack of lamb, this is where we would get our ribeye, if we were talking beef terms, because up in this section, we're still on the loin, which is nice and tender, but we're going towards the shoulder, which is a harder working muscle, and therefore more flavour build up. You may be able to see the ribeye-esque shape of that muscle. So while we have the lamb broken down, we can start to see the fat cover on the lamb. We can start to see the muscle shape. And this is what we can compare with our other lamb. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get that next lamb out. I'm going to cut it into primals, exactly the same as these, and then we can see where they differ. So here we have our poorly graded lamb, really not very good conformation and not very good fat cover. Talking of conformation, we are not looking at a full-bodied, stocky, good muscle animal here. We're not looking at something that has a nice fat cover that will help with the eating quality of the lamb. This, for me, is something that we would never buy in our shop, only for this purpose, really. So with a lamb like this, really, I only have one option. This, for me, would need to be completely boned out and probably minced for something like a lamb kofta or a lamb burger. But even in that scenario, I probably would have to find some lamb fat to put with this. I will break this down into primals and I will show you the difference between particular things like the chops and the leg steaks and maybe some of the shoulder. But I'll show you the exact difference that means this lamb will not eat very well and therefore I will not sell to my customer, against why we buy good lamb and why I will get that in for my customer. So let's break this down into primals and look at that comparison. Let's start on a comparison with the loins. You can see just in the shape of what's different here. And you might be saying, well, yes, this is a smaller lamb in weight. Yes, it is. But the reason that's a smaller lamb in weight is mainly because of the fat. If we turn this around, you can see in the ribeye muscle, actually, these eye muscles are very similar size. It is just fat, which is making this lamb so much smaller. And it's a real shame because they're probably from the same farm. They've probably come along the same way, been sent to the slaughterhouse as one batch. And unfortunately, this one not so good, this one great. If we could pull this one up as good as this one, there would be more money in it, and equally it would be something I could sell. At the moment, this isn't something I could sell. So let's trim these down and let's take a look at the difference of them even closer. Normally, I would bark the back of this lamb, and I can show you it on this one, where we simply mark down the back. Now, sometimes this is nice and easy to do, sometimes it's really difficult. I'm hoping that today this is going to come off nice and easy because we've got it on camera, but who knows. Almost stress-free. I'll just do the same to the other side. Again, comes off without too much aggro. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to split the rack from the chops. So I'm going to take out the kidneys here. What we're going to do in here is, again, we're going to look for the joint to separate the racks and the chops. So again, I'm going to alleviate a little bit of this fat. And then once we've exposed our joints here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bone rack of lamb. Now I'm going to find the joint after my rack of lamb, through here, into that joint, same again, into that joint, break it through. So I've just snapped through there. I can draw a line on the top, and separate the rack and the chops like so. And then I'll need to take my racks off as well. So I'm going to chine into here with a saw, both sides. So now that they're chined, just run my knife along the inside of that bone. Take that back plate away, like so. So for us in the shop, this slightly longer cutlet is perfect for things like barbecuing. I personally love this part of the meat. These cutlets are a good example of what we do want. Let's take a look at what we don't want. This is something I'm not exactly excited about. Now we'll try and make this as fair a competition as possible, and you can see the meat really not holding together well. It's very floppy when I try and cut it. I'll keep cutting through. So here we've got very lean, these bones, this meat here. If we tried to barbecue these in the way we would try and barbecue this, or any kind of cook, oven cook, this would dry up and become very chewy. There really wouldn't be much about it. Whereas this one has that fat, that basting quality, which will improve the eating quality. So we're just going to cut through what we would call the sixpence. So on our nice chop, some really good bits of marbling in there. So that is a really, really good lamb chop. We like that. Again, very sort of loose, very difficult to cut. No fat holding on at all here. Is this sellable in my shop? No. Would I buy it? Absolutely not. So this is the point. Obviously, it depends on markets. It depends on where you want to go with your lamb. But for me, you'll get a much better price and you're getting much better yield. This lamb is naturally bigger because of the fat cover. So you're getting more kilos, which means more per kilo. And again, this is the sort of thing that will make the butcher, the buyer, whoever it is, whatever route you're going down, this is what will make them come back for more. This is what will make them say, these lambs aren't going to cut it for me. So next up, let's take a look at our low and slow cuts, our breast and our shoulder. And this for me, you know, we can manipulate it. We can do what butchers do. We can make it look good wherever possible. But this is really not going to eat like this. So now we have our two shoulders, and I think what we'll do is we'll split these down the middle so that I can show you the difference. So we've got those two smaller halves, and you can see the fat layering. The difference between the two is huge. Again, that eating quality, the yield. When we talk about how much meat we're going to get from the bone of this lamb compared to this lamb, I'm still paying for roughly the same bone structure, give or take, but I'm getting far more meat for what I'm paying per kilo. So this for me is really the way I'm going to go. This for me, again, in honesty, if a lamb like this turned up at my door, I would be sending it back. Next up, we have the legs. See the difference here. Much fuller around the bone, much better yield on this lamb compared to this one. If we were to bone this out, then pound for pound, we'd be expecting to see a greater return here because the muscle is so much bigger and there's better fat cover. Not only is the muscle here smaller, but equally we would need to put something with it to try and elevate it, to try and give it that fat, to make it to a better eating quality. So all round more work here, less work, better yield. So in terms of a butcher's perspective, this is where I will always spend my money, and this is what I want to give my customers: good quality meat. Now, I've set the lamb out behind me. I've used some kale and some rosemary, but let's be honest, no amount of kale and rosemary should actually fool you into thinking that this is good lamb. Of course, we're not being disrespectful to the animal. We will use this product. We will use every last piece of meat that we can, because we will be respectful to the journey that it's had, the fact that the farmers put in the effort to get it to this stage. Equally, I actually had a bit of a tough time getting this lamb. I actually had to make a very, very special request to my supplier to try and seek me out a lamb that wasn't very good. And that's a good sign. Shows that hopefully there's not too much of this around anyway. And my supplier did come through and get me this P1 lamb. That is a poor conformation, so really not a good shape to the lamb. And one being the fat cover, really not a very good fat cover. Then we had the U, which is a much better conformation, a much better shape. I'm going to get much better yield. I'm going to get much better profitability. Equally, they rated it as quite a high level of fat. I would disagree slightly. I'd say it's a little bit leaner than the grading suggests, but a really nice fat cover nonetheless, and really good eating quality. So starting on the shoulders, you can see the difference. The better shaped lamb at the back and the slightly poorer lamb at the front. Again, that yield, that eating quality that we're looking for, and that's the story that goes all the way through. Again, this kale and rosemary, it really can't do much to change the lamb, and actually we can do as much as we can with it. We can present it as the best we can, but actually yield and eating quality cannot change. You can see the shape, you can see the color differences between the two. And again, this is why in a butcher shop like mine, we would always strive to buy good quality lamb. And equally, we would pay for that good quality lamb. That's why we do charge a premium, because we seek out quality first. And that is what we'll always do. So there's our lambs. I've actually boned out the P1 lamb, the smaller lamb, that conformation that we wouldn't usually go for. Now in this scenario, that lamb cost me £132. If I put that into my kofta mix at our shop price, I get back £145, meaning I make a gross profit of 9%. That's before I add in the labour. Of course, this is more labour intensive to bone out the whole lamb. I then have to add seasonings and more labour costs as we make that product and put it into our counter. That's before I even try and cover staff costs, overheads, and everything that is making it so difficult to have a business at the moment. Lamb number 2, the slightly larger lamb, the better shape, the better yield, that cost me £214 and it returned me 380, a gross margin of about 44%. Now, in that scenario, that is actually still under the margin that we're looking for as a gross margin, because again, I still need to add labour, not as much labour as here, but that is the situation we find ourselves with lamb at the moment. It's very similar with beef. Things like chicken are where we're getting much better margin, and those margins are making up for what we're losing out across the board. From a business perspective, this is where I want to be. This gives me a better percentage, less work. It also gives me much better eating quality. And the reason I need that better eating quality is because when my customers come to Surrey Hills Butchers, I need them to walk out with the best quality produce we can offer, so that they will return to us again and support our business model. This works in two ways. It supports us, supports our supply chain, supports the farmers, supports the customer, and gives them that good experience that we want them to have from good quality British meat that's farmed really well. The customer, their family, their friends, they're enjoying the best possible meal they can. And this is why butchers exist. This is why I'm very proud to be a master butcher. And this is why I stand by my craft and I butcher to the best possible outcomes that I can. I do that thanks to the great farmers that are out there and those great supply chains that still exist. We need to support them. We need to make sure that our quality is always top so that everybody is getting what they need and everybody is there to continue this process working together. If there's any more questions, please let me know. But for now, that's my breakdown of two very different lambs and how they would affect my shop and my business. Thanks very much for watching.